Okay, we're live.
Hi guys. Hi everybody.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi. Are you live on Facebook?
We are live on
Working
Facebook.
on it? Okay, good. Welcome to our live on airbrushing. And we've got Instagram and Facebook going at the same time. You guys can ask questions. I'm going to give a minute for people to get on before we get to the meaty bits of this. But we thought this would be a nice idea. So many of you bought airbrush machines during our Black Friday sale, and we're super appreciative of that, of you guys continually supporting us and helping you support you in your cookie business or cookie hobby. But we thought it might be good, give you guys a couple weeks to kind of play around with your machines. Hopefully you've taken them out of the box. If you haven't, that's okay. We're going to show you how to do that. And but we thought you might have some questions, and we could jump on here and give you the opportunity to ask questions directly of me and of Sarah. Sarah's going to pop in and help me in a little bit. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I hope everybody's doing well and getting ready for their Christmas cookies. Tell me what you're working on, where you're from, what's going on. It's a lovely day here. We are in Rhode Island, if you didn't know that. So we are in lovely Rhode Island. It's not too cold today. It's, I think, actually unseasonably warm, right? Warmer than usual. How we doing? We got questions, comments, people?
Nothing yet.
No questions, just a few hellos.
All right. Hello. Hello. Let me know if there's any sound issues too. We've got 2 different microphones going, so we're trying to get better on the sound for you guys. And as always, the lives will be available for replay later. So if you aren't watching this live, you can ask questions later in the comments during the replay, or if you have to, you know, jump out and go grab a kid from school or something like that, it'll be here later for you. So I'm going to take you through unboxing the Airbrush Max and the Mini, so you can see what comes in them. If you haven't opened your boxes yet, I'll just go through what's in each box, and then we will assemble one of them, and then I'm going to take you through some basics on getting started with your airbrush machine. And it's not a scary thing, I promise you. I meet so many people when we go to trade shows that tell me that they still have their machine in their box, they haven't taken it out, and you know, it just doesn't work in the box. It's funny that way, but you have to take it out of the box. So, and again, we've got Sarah and Emily manning the phone. So if you have any questions, feel free. I'm going to put my sassy 50-year-old lady glasses on here and show you what's inside the boxes. So we have 2 airbrush systems, the Max and the Mini. Both of them we have designed, we have built from the ground up, especially this Max. We took a couple years to make this one, and they're both great machines. I'll tell you briefly what the differences are as we open them up and go through them, but 95% of the information I'm going to give you today is the same for both of these machines. And even if you have one of our previous airbrush machines, the white machine, most of this info still holds true. So this is going to be great information no matter what machine you have. So with your Max, obviously it's a bigger system, comes in a bigger box. And let me show you what's in it. So we sell it 2 different ways. We sell it with a set of colors and a magic screen. So if you bought it with the colors, it's going to come with a small set of our essential airbrush colors, and it's also going to come with a magic screen. So we did offer it, and I think we kept it up on the website. We did offer it without these 2 things for people that are just looking to upgrade their airbrush machine that already have, you know, all these other accessories. So you may have it with this, you may have it without. So you're going to have this lovely brochure inside that gives you all the information on putting it together. It's going to give you some tips and tricks on things that might be wrong. We have some photo examples. We also have a really good videos on our YouTube channel. On the product pages for both of these products is an unboxing video that shows you, you know, takes you through slowly if you want to pause and replay how to put the machines together from when you get them. So you can go back and refer to those. So again, you've got your manual here. Your machine's going to come with an air hose. Inside the air hose should be an attachment right here. That is the quick connect piece that connects you to the compressor. Next, you will find an airbrush cleaning kit. If you don't have one of these, we also do sell these separately on our website. If you have an older system and you're watching this video, but the new machines do come with it. You're also going to find this lovely pouch that has your airbrush gun inside. Okay, airbrush gun. And then you're also going to have this piece here. This has your quick connect to attach your gun to the hose. It also comes with a dropper. You might use this, let's say you custom mixed a color in a little bowl and you want to grab some of that color and drop it into the color well. So hang on to that. This also comes with a wrench that you may or may not never ever need, but do not lose it, because if you ever need to loosen or tighten your nozzle, not cap, what's it called, Sarah?
The nozzle.
The nozzle.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll call it the thingy. You'll need that wrench. Okay, so hang on to that. So that all is going to be inside this lovely little custom pouch. All right. And then you're going to have your airbrush that comes inside this nice custom felt sack. Inside here, you'll open this up. And in here is your power cord and your compressor, okay? So these are all the pieces you're gonna need. I'm gonna put together a mini to show you how to put it together, because it's basically the same. So let me show you on the mini what that looks like. I'm gonna put these away for right now. So you can save all this, you can save your box. It's good to keep it all together for when you store it. You can put it all away. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. Okay, in your mini, obviously the mini is physically smaller. The reason is that the compressor is not as big of a motor. So the Max has a bigger motor, it has more air pressure, so hence it's the bigger system. You still have in your mini, you have a manual here. You've got the gun. The gun is the same for both machines, and you're going to have the same stuff in here. You do get the cleaning kit. Same kind of hose, okay? And then your power attachment comes separated. It's integrated into the Max. On this one, it's a plug-in. And then you've got your mini compressor here. So let me show you how to put that stuff together. I'm going to put this aside for a second. All right, so this one I already kind of have open. So on both machines, you're going to have your power switch in the back. This will light up pink when it is plugged in. Isn't that nice? We got so excited when we heard we could light it up pink. Yes. You're going to have your knob to control the air pressure. So plus side and clockwise is higher pressure. The opposite of that is lower pressure. For the mini, your power is going to go in here. Like I said, on the Max, it's already attached. You don't have to worry about that. And then we're going to attach the hose, and then we're going to attach the gun. How we doing out there, ladies?
No questions.
All right, that means I'm doing a great job,
Perfect.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, someone did say our brochure is wonderfully made.
Oh,
We
good.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
A while ago.
We love hearing that.
I didn't want to interrupt.
All right, so you've got your air hose. And by the way, we sell all these parts separately if you ever need replacement parts. Drop it down a drain, your dog eats it, anything like that, you know, because stuff happens. So you've got your air hose. I'm going to play cat's cradle over here. So to attach it to your compressor, it comes in two pieces, and you're going to put the narrow end. I did it right the first time. So you put, can you see this? Let's see. All right, so you take this part, put it through here, and then this gets attached to the back of your machine. Again, this is the same for the Max and the Mini. So this you just tighten up here. You don't need a wrench, just finger tight that right there. Okay. And then one end of your air hose goes on here. So what's nice about this is that if you ever need to take this off for some reason, you only have to unscrew. You don't have to yank it off of the metal bit. Now for the other end, air hose here. I've got my gun. Oh, they're in here. Okay. And then you have your quick connect attachment. And I'll show you why the quick connects are good.
We use really sturdy Ziploc bags
Yeah, we do
too.
really sturdy. So I just had a flashback to when my son John was like 4 and thought he'd be a YouTube influencer, and he wanted to unbox a Lego set on YouTube, and he's like, "Bags are really hard to open," and he just throws it. It's the cutest thing ever. But anyway, that was just me right then. Okay, so this is your quick connect for your gun. So you're going to put one end, again, that pointy end, you're going to put it into the other end of the air hose. And then what happens here is this just clicks right on here. Okay. And then to release it, you just pull down on the ridged part right here. So what's nice about this is that if you remember guns that don't have this, you would have to like yank this part off of this, and the suction involved can really make a mess, especially if you have color in here. So the reason the quick connect is nice is if you're working with multiple guns at one time, you simply just release that and change guns.
I have a few questions that are kind of all the same.
Okay.
A few people are asking what's the difference between our original white machine and the mini,
Mm-hmm.
and also what is the best one to get if you're just starting out.
So either one is great for a beginner. The Max does have a stronger compressor. It gives you more air pressure, and what that does is it creates an even finer mist when you're airbrushing. So it'll create a very even layer of color. Now, you still have to, it's not going to fix everything for you as if you are not the best airbrusher yet. So for a beginner, you may not appreciate the difference, if that makes sense, right away. And then the Max also comes with, like I said, it comes with a couple extra things. It has 2 integrated gun holders. You can see that on here, whereas the Mini has 1. So these are built into the side of the machine. We designed this ourselves. So it has 2 gun holders. So if you're working with multiple guns, you have a place for both of those. The Mini has 1 integrated holder. So the difference between the Mini and the white machine that we used to have is the Mini is a little bit stronger. The compressor is a little bit stronger. But we also decided to take the pieces that we liked from the Max that we designed and make a Mini out of it. So there's a price point difference. So if you're not, if you want to spend less and not invest as much, you would get the Mini. I hope that makes sense. Okay.
And where would you set the pressure on either machine?
So I'll go over that when we start airbrushing, but for both, I recommend you just leave it on high. Okay. And I'll explain why when I start airbrushing. All right. So again, this has 1 integrated gun holder. This one has 2. I have color in these, so I got to remember not to pick those up and start throwing them around. All right, and then to finish setting up your Mini, this one you would plug in. The Max you don't have to, but you would plug your adapter in here. And I've got my power cord here.
Look at that pink button.
Right? The pink button really makes it. Ta-da!
Ooh, ah.
So they both have a pink button. And now our Mini is ready to go. So remember, on both these machines, there's always going to be air coming out. Color doesn't come out till you pull back on this trigger. So don't think that there's something wrong, that the air is always coming out, okay? All right, I already have some color set up into my Max, so I'm going to show you, switch over to the Max and show you some tricks on starting with your airbrush. Okay, let me just slide this over a little bit. So this one also has a pink button. Now you can hear it's a little bit louder because it is a stronger machine. So I've already got one gun in here. Actually, both of these have color. So you can see if I wanted to switch, I don't have to like yank around with the guns and go back and forth. So your guns all come with, or all the machines come with one gun, and we have sell extras if you want an extra one. Okay. So when you get your airbrush, what I recommend is just start playing around on some paper towels. There's no need to take a blank cookie that you decorated or you spent a lot of time flooding and go right to the cookie. Okay, so to be kind to yourself and practice on some paper for a little while before you really get started on a cookie. All right, so as I said before, air is always coming out. Color does not come out until you pull back on the trigger. Okay. I pull mine with my thumb. Apparently this is not the majority. Most people use their, and I've had people tell me I'm doing it wrong. I'm like, well, as long as my cookie looks good, I think we're good, right? So play around with what is more comfortable to you. So again, I'm right-handed, so you probably can't see it, but I'm going to be pulling back this way. But a lot of people will also hold their gun like this. So it's whatever's more comfortable to you, okay? So again, no colors coming out. Sarah's going to show us some pointers later on what to do if color is coming out and what that means and how that's a quick fix. But color is going to come out when I start to pull back on my trigger, okay? Now I've got my machine all the way up on high. The most important thing you can do is not think of this trigger as a on-off switch. Okay, so don't just do this. You're going to end up spraying more color than you need. You want to learn how to finesse. And I'm pulling back just a little bit. Okay, and play around on some paper towels. You know, if I get really close, that's when I can create these beautiful fine lines. If I had a design where I wanted to do that. If I am stenciling, I don't want to do that because I want the stencil to look nice and even. So I would come back, I would come further away and try to do nice even strokes. Okay. So remember, if you're down close, you can create nice fine lines and do some nice graffiti art if you're good at that. This would be fun for Valentine's Day. You could do a love. Okay. I almost sprayed you, Sarah. I got so excited.
I feel like I'm always covered in airbrush color, so it really wouldn't matter.
So practice on some paper towels or a piece of paper. You could even print out a piece of paper that has some design on it and practice, you know, staying within the lines, or like take a PYO and airbrush it and then practice just filling in the colors. So that'll just give you some confidence on how you're using your airbrush gun.
Saguaro Sweets is a fellow thumb user, so
Yay!
You're not alone, Hillary.
I feel validated. Thank you. All right. Any other questions right now?
Someone said old coloring books are good practice.
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. You know, I have heard that before. That is perfect. That's a great example. Now, you can leave your machine running. I think it's nice to shut it off when you're not using it. I don't recommend leaving it on all day by any means, but you turn it off. Another thing you want to do is when you are not actively using it, make sure you take your finger off the trigger and don't be like, oh, I'm going to look over here, and you're still pulling back on that trigger. I've seen people do this, so don't do that, okay? When you are ready to work on a cookie, you can do a few things fun to start with that maybe will build your confidence. One thing you can do is you can color the whole cookie with airbrush color. We did these last year with some, Valentine's Day is coming. Did you know that? I know it's not even Christmas yet. It's 13 days till Christmas, but Valentine's Day is fast approaching. And one thing you can do that's nice, we have a blog tutorial on this, is making pastel colors with your airbrush colors and then airbrushing these. So these were all airbrush colors. They were all flooded with white. So that's something nice you can do with your airbrush machine, is take a white cookie that you have flooded and airbrush the whole thing. So let me show you what that would look like. And this is a good way to practice too, just to make sure like you're getting good at doing even spraying and not making it blotchy. To add color, this is our larger bottle. These are our smaller bottles, both of them. You just add your color right into the well. Okay. I get a lot of questions on how much color should I add in. You can see there's kind of like a directional change on the well. Where it goes from curved to straight, I would recommend not going past that little line, that ridge. But you can turn this pretty vertical as long as you don't go past that line. As far as how many cookies can I get out of one color well? We get asked this question a lot. Really, really hard to answer because yes. I don't know what size your cookie is, what's the design that you are doing with your cookie. Are you covering an entire, 4.5-inch plaque with color, or are you just airbrushing, that little bit of black? So it makes a huge difference on what your end result is. If you have a lot of cookies to do, let's say you're doing, 5 dozen cookies that are all the same design, as you get into a few cookies in, you'll know, okay, I need to fill my well up every 3 cookies or every 5 cookies or whatever it may be. But that's something that's really hard for me to answer or to Sarah to answer when she's answering support emails as to how many cookies do you get out of the color well. Makes sense. And it might change depending on the color too. Like some colors, if you are more saturated than others and you might need more color or not.
Just how heavy-handed you are on the trigger even makes a big difference.
So one thing I do recommend is whenever you're airbrushing, keep a little piece of paper towel next to you. And every time you pick up your airbrush gun and turn it on, just give it a little spray just to make sure it's not splattered. It's spraying the way you expect it to be spraying. You never know if you walked away and something happens while you're gone, or something turns into a clog that wasn't there before. But just get it going and make sure you're good to go before you go on your actual cookie. So let's say this cookie, I want to spray pink. The most important thing to do is to try to use even strokes. So think about when you are piping and you're piping lines and you want the lines to all be the same thickness. You don't want the lines to break or to squiggle. So you have to learn the ratio of pressure to speed when you're piping a cookie, right? If you go too fast, the line breaks. If you go too slow, the line will squiggle. So think of that when you start to airbrush, is that it's important to get like a consistent rhythm if you are covering the whole thing or if you're airbrushing a full design. So I'm going to start like a little bit off the cookie. I should go this way. So that way I grab the edge of the cookie. And I'm only pulling back my trigger maybe like 20%. And I'm about 5 inches away maybe from my cookie. Okay. I'm going to go back here and start over. So usually you're going to need, if you're doing something like this, you're probably going to want maybe two layers, 2 passes with your color. But as long as you are not too close and you have even pressure and even movement, you're going to have a nice even layer of color. So why might you do this instead of doing just a pink icing? I'm sure people are like, well, why wouldn't you just flood it pink? Well, maybe I'm doing like a whole ton of cookies and they're all different colors and I don't want to mix that many colors. So if I have an airbrush machine, how easy is it to just flood them all in white and then come back in with my airbrush? So that's why they're great, if you're doing these conversation hearts at Valentine's Day. Another nice thing you can do, and let me show you how to do this, is you can add some shading to the outside edge of your cookie. So having a, what do you call this?
Turntable?
Turntable, thank you. Having a turntable can be really helpful. So let's say we wanted to do a little shading. Actually, I did one earlier just so I could show you, but doesn't that add some nice depth to it, right? So, and if this cookie was already flooded, say in a pale pink, we could do the same thing. But you can also just use the same color as I just airbrushed. So when I was airbrushing the whole thing, I was up over the cookie, right? If I'm going to shade the outside edge, I'm going to come in a little bit more at an angle. Again, just make sure I'm running properly. So this takes a little bit of getting used to, but I'm going to start coming in at an angle. And I'm really using light pressure on this because I want to make sure I can see where it's landing before I start spraying too much. So I'm just catching the edge of this cookie. But this adds some really nice depth, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use your airbrush machine to add depth, like on flowers, even when you're doing like pumpkins or ornaments and you have those segmented parts, you can then airbrush the those layers so it adds more depth and more of a 3D look to those cookies.
Can you give a word of advice to cookiers who might worry about getting airbrush color on the edges of their cookies?
Yeah, I would say don't worry too much about it because honestly, there's no way to avoid it. If you want to do it, especially if you're doing a shading technique like this, it's just simply unavoidable. If you are stenciling, for example, like this one was stenciled, and because when you're stenciling, you want to be staying on top of the cookie, aiming down at the cookie, you're only going to get like a tiny bit of overspray on the edges, if at all. So it's mostly just an issue if you are trying to do some shading, but I really wouldn't sweat it. I really wouldn't. It's not, I mean, I wouldn't like not eat that because it has some pink on the edge, you know, but isn't that nice? That adds some nice depth to it.
And if you're doing a straight edge cookie, you can always just use a zester and zest
you
off
could,
those
yes.
sides.
You 100% could. Like this has a little, we dipped these, so this has a little icing on the edges. We could zest those right off if we wanted to. So that's how you would do like a full coverage of airbrush, do a little shading with your airbrush machine. And let me show you a little bit about stenciling now. Any questions?
Kayla wants to know if there's any taste concerns, like if you coat an entire cookie like that.
No, there really isn't. It's water-based, and then it's just food color. There really isn't. I would say the only mouth concern is that, let's say you airbrush a lot of black, that ink will come off the same way if they eat a cookie that's been flooded with black icing. So that is something to maybe consider. You know, like if I were to eat this cookie, I would get some pink on me, same way as if I flooded the cookie with pink. So but taste wise, it's not detectable.
Perfect. I do have a couple of questions coming through from Facebook that are very specific to their personal machines and issues with their machines. So I would just say maybe those customers could contact me directly at support@thecookiecountess.com. I'm happy to help troubleshoot individual guns that way. It's a little tough to do through Facebook comments.
Yeah. If you're having a specific to you issue, and again, Sarah's going to come around here in a minute or two and just give you some troubleshooting tips for common questions she has. But yeah, if you have something specific going on, it's best if you can email us and we can directly talk to you. All right, so let's do a little airbrushing. So if you bought your Max with the bundle, it does come with a magic screen. So I'm going to show you using a magic screen and not using a magic screen. Another accessory that you will really want to have if you're stenciling is a stencil genie. This frame holds the stencil in place for you. And then another thing that we haven't mentioned yet, but I'm working on top of, is the Cookie Countess counter cover. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend. As you can see, you know, you do get some airbrush color on your work surface, but this will protect your work surface. You can wash this down. People swear by these. They love them. And while I'm talking about that, big concern people have is airbrush color getting everywhere. So I will tell you, if you are very trigger happy and you are spraying too far from your cookie, right, and you're way up here, and you're like going crazy with the airbrush, more of that airbrush color is going to have a chance to like float around before it lands. Okay, the closer you are to your surface, the more you're aiming down, the less chance it's going to have to float around. but you do want to protect your work surface. Like I would not recommend airbrushing right on your marble counters. It will come off though. I've had some panic moments with pink where I spilled it on my like white granite counter at home, and it didn't come off right away. I like let it sit for a minute with some dish soap on it, and it did come off, so that was great. But again, if you're aiming down, you're not too far away, and you're not pulling back your trigger like crazy, it should be contained to within like a foot of you. Okay. That's not to say that if you are airbrushing pink all day, you are not going to blow your nose and see some pink. If you've done this before, you know. If you've never airbrushed before and you come up to Valentine's Day and you're airbrushing a lot of red and a lot of pink, do not panic when you start to have pink boogers. Okay, I'm just telling you, right? I'm just being real. All right, so let's talk about stenciling a little bit. Okay. I need my safety paper towel. It's like my emotional support paper towel over here. Okay. And let's get a blank cookie. All right, so if you are airbrushing, and guess what? I'm going to give you a little preview of one of our cute stencils that we're coming out with this week. We're going to be launching our new Valentine's products on Friday. How cute is this stencil? So this is one of the new ones here. So if you're stenciling, your stencil is going to pop right onto that bottom piece of your stencil genie, and then the top frame piece, and it's all magnetic. This is going to hold this all into place, okay? Then what you can do is just lay this right on your cookie. Now you do want the stencil touching your cookie. This should not be hovering above your cookie, okay? So you want this to be tight to your cookie. Another tip is that you really want your flood icing to be flat as possible. So if you're still working on your flood icing, if you're a beginner, if you have a lot of hills and valleys in your flood icing, air is going to get under that stencil and possibly give you some bleeding, some blurry edges. So it's best to do your best to get your flood icing as flat as possible. Now, first I'll do this without the magic screen, and then I'll show you with the magic screen. So this design has like a full design. It's going to go off the edge of the stencil. That's fine. You don't have to worry about airbrushing and staying within the edge. One thing I like to do that you'll see is as I move around the edge of the cookie, I'm going to hold it down with my thingamajiggy, because most cookies, when you flood them at the very edge of the flood, it tends to kind of roll down a little bit. So you will have this little rounded piece at the end, and it can be helpful to use a thingamajiggy or some sort of scribe to kind of hold down the stencil tight to the edge of the cookie. So when I'm stenciling, I'm about the same distance away as I talked about before, and I'm going to do some really light passes, okay? So you're not trying to get your full color range down at once. Now, if I want to go around the edge and hold the stencil tight to the edge, I can do that. Or you can just do, back and forth strokes. So again, you can see this is really light. One of the reasons you want to do it light is because you don't want the color to start beating up on the stencil. Then what I'm going to do is I go back to the same side I started at and do another pass. So if you start to see color, and I'll show you what that looks like. If you start to see color bead up on your stencil, that means you're using too much color. And you're going to have bleeding issues. It's going to be like seeping under the stencil. So to get a darker color, you just want to do more passes. So I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to do this half, not the way I would want you to do. So if I pull back my trigger like a whole bunch, you see how you can see like the wetness on the stencil? If you start to see that, that's bad. You've sprayed too much, you've gone too far, okay, and you're going to end up with bleeding. This side, I don't have that, I never did. Even if I go back to do another layer, I'm going to do it nice and light, and I won't get that buildup, okay?
Should you always do the second and third passes in the same direction?
I mean, I do just because it gives that first part time to dry, by the time you get to the other side, a lot of times it's already dry. So here is this. So you can see over here how much bleeding happened along this edge, whereas opposed to this is much more clear. Okay.
Such a cute stencil, though.
It is a really cute stencil. Now, if we're using the magic screen, you really don't have to worry about bleeding, which is great. That's what's so nice about the magic screen, is because it holds the stencil really tight to the cookie. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to take a diagonal stripe stencil here, that because this is like kind of wiggly, there's a lot of cut out of it in order to make the design. It has more opportunity to move around while you're airbrushing. So you start layering the same way with your bottom of your genie, then your stencil, then you're going to put down your magic screen, making sure you can see all four corners of the magnets. Okay, and now we have the magic screen on top. So it should be, you know, magic screen, then stencil, then cookie. So when I put this on here, it's going to keep the stencil from moving. It's going to keep the stencil tight to the cookie. One thing you will notice if you're using a magic screen is that some of the color does get caught in the screen, so you end up going through a little bit more color than you might otherwise. So I am going to pull back my trigger just a little bit more, knowing that I'm using the screen and knowing that I'm going to need to spray more than I would without the screen. But you get a nice result with this. What was that, Emily?
Does it matter what side of the stencil you use?
It might, depending on the design. So let me show you. Now, when you lift these off, you want to come straight off or like tilt it to one side, but you don't want to move it around. So look how nice and crisp that is. Like that would literally be impossible without the magic screen. So any stencil can benefit from using the magic screen. Even the one I did before would be crisper with the magic screen. As far as the stencil, doesn't matter which side. So it depends on the design. Our stencils are always oriented where the tab and the crown are at the top right of the stencil. It only matters, obviously, if there's writing, it matters. If you are working with something like a two-piece stencil, it's only going to line up if you orient it properly both times with both layers. Okay. So remember, ours is always at the top right. Other companies may do theirs different.
Do you have any recommendations for somebody who has a little bit of a hard time seeing through the stencil screen for if there's enough coverage?
So yeah, I think this is something that I think it comes with practice, that you know, and then when we first started using them, I had to remind myself, okay, spray a little more. You probably, normally you'd be way done by now than you would be. So I think it's something you kind of get used to, kind of like, you know, consistency, like with your icing consistency. I wouldn't recommend using the magic screen necessarily if you're doing like a multi-piece stencil and you really have to see where those second and third stencils, if it's like a three-piece, need to land. You can't see that. That's the only time it kind of gets a little bit, it could be hard to see. Outside of that, I would just get used to how much it takes to spray. Okay, so let me show you, for example, let's do a two-piece stencil. Now for this one, I'm going to do this cute one. This one came out with just recently, but I think it was like stealth, like Valentine's Day. We stuck in on Black Friday, but this is really, really cute. So this one maybe wouldn't necessarily matter which stencil we did first. Sometimes on a 2 or 3 piece stencil, it does matter which one you do first, usually only from the standpoint of you being able to find where the next stencil is supposed to be. This one's pretty straightforward, but some of them are like, you know, oriented, like, I don't want to say wonky, but, you know, they're like scattered, and it's a lot easier to see it. And we did there's a live we did in December during Black Friday weekend where I did some multi-piece stencils. So if you have trouble with those, I would go back and check that one out. So I'm going to do this part first. This is the stripe part of this. And I'm doing that one in black. So I'm going to switch over to my gun, which already has black. So you can see I'm just going to pull down on this. And actually, I'm going to switch this one to the back side, put the pink in the back, do the black in the front. There we go. And again, get your little security blanket over here. Make sure you're good. And so for this one, if I wanted to use the screen, I definitely could, because it doesn't matter so much on where it's going to be. I don't need to see exactly where it's going. Do you know what I mean? And this doesn't have to be black and pink. You could do other colors. I just happen to have those loaded in my machine. Okay. So so for this, I do have to kind of cover the whole thing because I can't see it exactly where those lines are until I start airbrushing. So if you can't see, you will have to do like the whole thing. You know what I mean? You'll have to go back and forth. But if you can see, you only need to airbrush the bits that are open. So that way it saves you some airbrush color. And you'll notice I stopped pulling back my trigger in between passes. So I'm not constantly pulling back and wasting color. Now I'm going to pull this off. All right, so what is important about when you're doing a two-piece stencil is, because this doesn't really give me any clues as to which part is up. If I pick up this cookie and like spin it around and put it back down, I may not know which orientation this is. So I would recommend, you know, putting it to the side in a place where you know this was the top, okay, or whatever that may be. Again, some multi-piece stencils, it's really obvious, doesn't matter. This one, I'm probably going to want to know my way back when I go back there. Now, one thing about stenciling is when we were talking about doing too much color, like if it's beating up on your stencil, or airbrushing it just in general, even if you're doing, you know, some full coverage style airbrushing, if it's taking a really long time to dry, that typically means that you've used too much color. Okay, so if it starts to look blotchy, it's not drying evenly, that usually means that you've used too much. And it really doesn't take as much color as you think it will, usually to get the saturation you want. So if you find that your airbrush color, I mean, you know, this is completely dry. I mean, these cookies are kind of old, so they're definitely dried out. But if it's not dry within a few minutes, the only exception I would say to that is if you're airbrushing gold or a shimmer that are thicker, they do take a little bit longer to dry. So if you're covering, like if you're doing a gold heart and you're airbrushing the gold, that might take a little bit longer to dry, but it still shouldn't take an hour. Okay. So now my second piece here. So remember, I know where my top is. So this one, and I know I've got my crown up here, and I knew I put it kind of in the middle. So I'm going to find out, I know that these hearts go in between the lines. And so I'm going to find where to put my stencil based on the first layer. Okay. Now I could use a magic screen. It might be a little bit hard to see to do that. So like this is an instance where maybe I wouldn't use the magic screen. But for something like stripes, I would 100% use the magic screen all day long. All right, so now I got to switch back to my pink. Now, if you were doing a whole bunch of these cookies, you would do, you know, all the black first, and then you'd switch over, and then you do all the pink. So you have to think of it kind of as an assembly line. Hi, Tucker. Tucker's back here. Okay. So now I've switched back over to my pink. And again, if I want to, I can hold down this edge. This cookie is really flat, thankfully, but I could hold down the edge just to make sure that I don't get a lot of lift on those corners. Okay. And then you can see a little bit right here. So I'm using that. And this is called a thingamajiggy. We sell these in sets of 2. They're only $3. The pointy end is great to use too. You can also use the pointy end, but there's a lot of uses for the thingamajiggy. And you don't have to rush through this. You know, I'm taking my time, making sure I got each heart here. So this is an example I was saying before where you don't have to like airbrush the entire thing. Oops, I just bumped it. Try not to bump it. No, I just bumped it again. You guys, it's because I'm nervous because I'm on camera. Oh, there we go. So I'm just going to go heart by heart. This would also be a cute stencil to do the first layer in airbrush and the second layer with royal icing. But since we're talking about airbrushing here. All right. And then what I wanted to show you is something else you can do with your airbrush is, now they do make, you know, we do have color shimmers, or you can mix your own. And I can talk about that too. But let's say we want to add a little bit of shimmer to this. Before you remove the stencil, get your favorite edible glitter and spritz it while the airbrush is still damp before you take the stencil off, and then you'll only have it on hearts and not the rest of it. So cute. Now you have some nice little sparkly hearts.
Love it.
Cute, right? And I really like this one.
Do you have to wash the stencil in between every cookie?
So not necessarily between every cookie. I wouldn't probably do more than 3 at the most, because what happens is you rehydrate whatever, you know, if I went back to this one now that I did, like there is some black airbrush on this, and when you go to spray it again, you're rehydrating all that color that's already on there, and you might end up with a little bit of blotchiness, a little bit of bleeding around the edges of the opening of the stencil. So it is a good idea to wash it, you know, every couple of times, maybe every time, but literally it could take 10 seconds. You just rinse it with water, pat it dry, and keep going. Okay. What other questions do we have?
I've got one saying she just came on and is asking what the magic screen is for. So that is a silk screen product
Yes.
made out of stainless steel mesh.
Yep, it's stainless steel, so it is food safe. These we use, that's why they already use, that's why they have color on them. These you can just rinse, you can scrub them if you want to, you can just rinse them off and let them dry, pat them dry, but it holds the stencil down to the cookie, so it keeps it the stencil from fluttering around. So we used it on this one to achieve some really crisp lines. What am I missing? All right, I think I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. She, so Sarah is one of our in-house cookie makers. She's also the star of our customer support. So if you have ever emailed in or called in, especially about any troubleshooting you're doing with your airbrush machine, you have 99% of the time gotten Sarah on the phone or on the email. So I thought I would ask Sarah just to come over and just give you some of the most common questions she gets, or troubleshooting things, or things to look out for, and about cleaning your airbrush gun. So she's going to take over and do that. All right. You want to hand her the, okay. All right. I'm going to do a little switcheroo here. I get to see what y'all been saying about me.
Nothing but kind things, of course.
Okay. All right,
hi, everybody. Hi. So let's go over some of the most common things that you all email me about with your airbrush guns, and we will just use the guns that Hillary was using just now as our examples. So probably the most common thing that people will email me and say is, my gun is spraying color and I'm not touching the trigger. Now, as Hillary said, your gun will always spray air without you touching the trigger if the compressor is on, but the color flowing on its own is a simple adjustment typically. So if color is flowing without you pulling the trigger, it just means that the needle that runs through your gun, here's the needle, it is out of position. So when it is at rest, it should be all the way forward in your gun, resting right against the front of the nozzle. If the needle has moved even slightly backwards in the gun and it doesn't return fully forward to its resting position, then it's allowing a tiny space for that color to be picked up by the air and flow outwards out of the gun. So I'm going to mess with this needle a little bit just to give you...
Don't mess with my gun,
sorry.
Sarah.
So this was how Hillary was using the gun, not spraying anything. And if the needle is pulled backwards even a tiny bit, that's more than a tiny bit, but I am not touching the trigger and color's flowing. So the easy fix for this is to literally just unscrew this needle chucking nut we have right here. Press your needle gently but firmly all the way forward and retighten that nut nice and tightly. Now we're back to working order with no color spraying until I pull that trigger. So that is the most common question that I get emailed to me on a regular basis. Another question that also involves these inner workings of the gun is my trigger is kind of flopping around, or it doesn't feel like it's springing back where it's supposed to be. And again, it's a simple adjustment, thankfully, so it's not a moment for panic, even though it might feel like it is. So it just means that this tension adjuster is not fully tightened enough. So when it is in place, this is fully tightened and my trigger will pop right back into place once I let it go. If this has been loosened, the trigger will start to flop around a little bit, and it doesn't have the same resistance that it did before. So again, it's a matter of just simply giving this a nice tighten, making sure that your needle is back exactly where it needs to be by giving it a press forward and tightening that needle chucking nut again. And that's the case. My trigger will be nice and springy and pop right back into place.
Nice.
So now, assuming that your gun is working well, let's talk about cleaning it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just empty the gun of any color that might be in there. If I am doing this in my kitchen or even in the kitchen here, I just do this right into the sink because it's just easier. It goes right down the drain. Here, I'm just going to spray it out onto paper towels until I'm running mostly clean. And then again, if I'm in my kitchen, I'm just going to stick this whole gun right under the running water. There's nothing here that can't go in water. I know this is an electrical appliance and people might not want to, they might be afraid to have this anywhere near water, but as long as this doesn't come in contact with water, you're all good. So I would just run this right under running water, but here we're going to use a water bottle. And you're just going to run more paper towels, Hillary. I know your emotional support paper towels. I need my emotional support paper towels, yes. So just fill your color well with the water and then just spray it out. And you can see it's pale, but it's there.
You can do this into your garbage can.
Your garbage can, your sink, whatever you've got going on. Once you spray this fully through, it might seem like you don't have any color left in the well, because if you look in there, I don't know if you can see, it really doesn't look like there's a lot of color residue in there. But what we're going to do, first of all, I would spray that through several times just in and of itself. But what you really want to do to make sure that there's no residue stuck in this nozzle is, with my compressor on, block those front nozzle caps and pull the trigger gently, and you'll see that water start to bubble up. And I don't know if you could tell, but I could see that that water bloomed like a little bit of pink. So I know that there's still pink residue in here. So I usually make it bubble up and then dump it right out. If I have freed any residue that might have been clogging my nozzle, I don't want to try to spray that back through the nozzle. I just want to get it out of the gun. I do that several times every time I'm cleaning my gun, just to make sure that there's not anything in there that's going to gunk up the works between when I put my gun away and the next time I use it. And then when I think that I've got a good clean gun, give it another spray, and this is spraying nice and clean and clear. Make sure that you also rinse or clean off your nozzle caps, dry those nicely. We don't want any color left on this gun. The number one culprit of clogs is not cleaning all the residue out of your gun. And again, when I say a clog, I don't mean what you fish out of your bathroom sink. I mean the teeniest, tiniest little bits of particles can really cause an issue for you down the line, especially if you're using thicker colors like metallics or anything you've mixed with white. Those tend to be very residue-y colors, where these colors rinse away very easily. So you want to put that little extra bit of work in to really get rid of any of those thicker particles that may be hanging on. One other question I get, and I can't really replicate it here, but I can address it, is that you have airflow, but the color is bubbling up in your color well. That typically means that there's an issue with the nozzle. So whether you have removed your nozzle for cleaning, which, little side field trip here, when you're cleaning your gun, you really shouldn't have to take the nozzle off. You should really do your best to make sure that just the really repeated rinsing and spraying gets you back to base level. You want to avoid taking your nozzle off as much as possible. First, because most people aren't super comfortable with doing it on a regular basis. So it's very easy to overcorrect. And when you try to put it back on, you just accidentally shear off those threads, and then they're stuck inside the gun and your nozzle's now broken. But also it can just be tough to find that sweet spot of getting it back on perfectly. So if your color is bubbling up in your color cup and you're not touching the trigger at all, generally speaking, either the nozzle is not tight or too tight, one or the other, or it's very possible that the nozzle has been broken off a little bit and those threads are messed up inside the gun. Some people will try to very quickly shove the nozzle caps back on and hope that it's going to hold the nozzle on in place. The airflow is disrupted at that point, so that's not going to work. So it's either replace the nozzle or replace the gun. Any questions?
You kind of already answered it, but somebody asked how long can you keep color in the gun well?
So you don't want to let it sit is basically the answer. So if you are working on, several dozen cookies and you have to step away for a moment to go do something else, that's fine, especially if you're using the thinner airbrush colors. If you are using metallics or anything you've mixed with white, those colors, especially when you buy those colors, I don't know if you can tell well, Hillary probably shook this up good, but on the metallics, you have to shake them really well because they tend to separate the particles. The heavier particles sink to the bottom. So when you get these bottles, you shake them up really well. Same thing with the white. If you let this color sit in your well and you go about your business doing things, the same exact thing is going to happen here. Those heavier particles are going to sink right towards the bottom, towards your nozzle, which can cause an issue later on. So if you know that you're not going to be using your metallic shimmer for a little while or your white mixed colors, just spray it out, dump it back in your bottle, whatever you've got to do, and give it a rinse so that nothing has time to sit and clog things up.
Someone wants to know, does airbrush color have a long shelf life?
I think it's several years.
Yeah, it's 4 to 5 years, I think, are ours.
Well, this bottle, and I'm not sure, did this come out of my back kitchen or it's brand new? Yeah. This one's got a shelf life of late 2025. So yeah, you've got a couple of years at the very least.
Yeah, this one says 28. I think these just came into our, so
that makes sense.
Yeah, they're water based, so there's really nothing to. I mean, I think it's a best buy too, or exactly. They have to have an expiration, but because they're water based, they don't really expire.
That being said, if you notice that your colors have thickened at all, you might just want to discard and replace. Things can be sensitive to temperature, so if you keep them in a cold basement or something like that, things can be affected. But yeah,
and you want to put the cap back on properly so the water doesn't evaporate.
Right. And you should also store these bottles standing upright because if they lay down, you chance a leak and that'll get all over everything. In airbrush color, if nothing else, it spreads. So definitely store them upright.
I have a question over here. This is a good question actually for us to answer.
Sure.
She says, I have a new machine from y'all. Hey y'all. I would like to, or we're not from the South, so I like saying y'all when I can. I would like to order.
Use guys.
Use guys. Yeah, you guys. You guys. I would like to order another gun for backup. Yeah. Which option should I choose? Do they come with all the components I need?
Sure.
So maybe you can answer this.
Absolutely. One. So we sell 2 different size nozzles on our guns. We have the 0.4 millimeter gun, which is what your system comes equipped with, and that has a silver back cap. We also have a 0.5 millimeter nozzle, and the cover is gold so that you don't mix them up. We have these in a couple of different styles. So if you have purchased a Max or a Mini system that comes equipped with the Quick Connect, you're going to want to make sure that you purchase the Quick Connect version of either of these guns. If you have the old style machine and you're content with that and you don't want to change it over to the Quick Connect, then you can purchase the standard bottom, which is this guy right here. Show you. Looks just slightly different. This connects directly to the hose, where on the Quick Connect version, it connects to that Quick Connect base. So this would be the bottom you'd be looking for if you have the old white system. Now, if you have the old white system and you prefer this Quick Connect system option, we do sell these Quick Connect available on the website. I believe they're $7.49 a piece. You would just need one per gun. So if you have 3 old guns with this old base on it, just buy 3 of those quick connects, and you can change your system over simply by unscrewing that base and popping the new quick connect version on.
And can you explain when you would use the gold tip gun?
Yeah, absolutely. So I prefer to use the gold tip gun anytime I'm using a thicker airbrush color. So if I'm using any metallic shimmers, if I'm using anything I've mixed with white, because white is actually kind of counterintuitively, it's the thickest of all of our airbrush colors because it does take a lot of pigment to make that bright white color. So anything that's very residuey or is a thicker color, I'm always going to go for the larger nozzle just to start me out with, you know, that little extra on my side. I know some cookiers make their own colors with powders. We don't recommend that, but I have had cookiers tell me that they will make that with vodka or Everclear and a mixed color powder. If you do that, use the larger gun. Just again, those particles can cause a clog immediately. So just have that little extra 0.1 millimeter on your side.
And I would add, if you're looking for like a backup, it's good to have the gold. I wouldn't say that should be just your backup, because if you're using a regular color, you're going to blow through a lot of color using the gold tipped. So it's good to have both.
Yeah, I mean, you can use regular colors in the gold, but as Hillary said, if you are, you know, not really careful with your trigger pressure, the color just wants to flow through it. Those thin colors especially, they just want to come through. So it is good to have extra guns on hand for sure if you are in the middle of a project and suddenly your gun isn't spraying anymore, or you've broken your nozzle, or fill in the blank. There's nothing worse than not being able to continue with your gun. So having that backup really is key.
Yes, the thicker white will go through the 0.4 gun, but it moves a little better in the gold.
It does,
yes.
yeah.
And then someone's asking, can we show the quick connect close up? We can do it one more time. We showed it a lot in the beginning, so you can also go back to the beginning, but we'll show it one more time.
Tug down on that base and it pops right off to reattach. It's nice and perfect. Super easy.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're so welcome, Hillary.
Oh gosh, how is it 3 o'clock already?
Is it really?
Is it really? Is this a
Time
lie?
flies when you're airbrushing.
Yeah, will you hold this? All right, I'm just going to go over here and say hi to Sarah. Say thank you, Sarah.
You're very welcome, Hillary.
Hi. All right, no, you can say thank you. All right, so Sarah loves to answer your questions in email. But if you have, like she said in the beginning, if you have really specific questions to an issue you're having, you can email us, support@thecookieCountess.com. One thing I do want to say, though, is that we do test every machine before it ships out of here. Like, we literally take everything out, we spray water through it to make sure everything. Now, it's not to say in shipping something may not jostle its way loose, or, you know, those things that she was saying where, like, the color might spray. These are things that, like, if the screw starts to migrate, these things just kind of happen over time. And again, I want to make the point that you said that you don't need to take your gun apart after every. This is a real big misconception that drives me bananas. You do not need to disassemble your gun after every use for a deep clean. It's just simply not necessary. And if you can avoid taking your gun apart, so that way you don't have to put it back together just right, it's better. Honestly, rinsing immediately after is the best thing you can do.
You can even do it mid-order. You don't have to wait to the very end of your order.
Yeah.
If you're in between and you just want to give a quick rinse so that you can get back to zero, even better.
And if you're working with one gun and you need to change colors, you're going to want to go through that process of cleaning it out in between colors. Once you get the hang of it, it takes a minute. It's really not a big deal. Right. But yeah.
I think I did see a question in there of, do you have to rinse and clean between colors? You can, or you can rinse. It really depends on what your result is going to be. If I'm moving from yellow to orange, maybe it's not a big deal. Right. But if I'm moving from green to pink, I'm going to end up with a muddy color if I don't rinse. So it really depends on you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yes. Well, I hope this was helpful. I didn't realize we'd be on so long, but, you know, let's talk about airbrushing all day. Yeah. So thank you to everybody that has bought an airbrush machine from us. I hope this was really helpful. Again, we have really complete unboxing videos on the product pages of both the Mini and the Max. On our YouTube channel, we have lots of tips. We do have a video on how to disassemble and reassemble your gun. We have troubleshooting videos. So we do have lots of stuff out there to hopefully help you along your airbrush journey. But remember, it does not work in the box. You have to take it out of the box. All right, guys. And this will go up on replay so you can continue to ask questions and go back and refer to it. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you,
Hillary.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Emily. And we'll see you guys soon.
Happy airbrushing.